Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to 270. This is the Captain's Corner, and I'm your cruise director, Mitch, of course, and thank you for being here. For those of you that are maybe not sure what's going on, this is a very fun and unique way for you to learn about the Anthem of the Seas and meet some of the senior officers here on the ship. Very simply, what's going to happen is we'll introduce ourselves, and we will then go ahead and turn the floor over to you. You can ask a question and or of any of the senior leaders. So we're going to kick things off with our introductions. I'll start. Once again, I am Mitch, your cruise director, so I'll go into a little bit more information. Coming to you all the way from Ontario, Canada, just outside of Toronto. Been with the cruise line Royal Caribbean for 15 years. Started as cruise director staff, was DJ, activities manager, now been cruise director. Worked on every class of ship and all the itineraries around the world. And I look forward to any questions you may have about the operation or entertainment. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ivan. I'm coming from Croatia, and I'm chief engineer on board Anthem of the Seas. I'm with the company 23 years, and last 15 years chief engineer. And you?
All right, I'm the driver, and I'm from Denmark. I joined Royal Caribbean International in 2003. Before that, I was with Maersk Line and the Navy. Throughout my time in Royal Caribbean, so I guess that'll be about, 17 years, almost 17 years, I guess, in the end of the day, because I actually started in 2002. I haven't decided if I like it yet, so I think I'm going to give it another 15 years or so and then make up my mind. And throughout my time, I also worked with the new building teams in Finland and Germany with the construction of the Oasis of the Seas and Celebrity Solstice. And for the past almost 10 years I've been a captain, so might have seen some of you on Brilliance or Liberty, Adventure Quantum here. So let's see what kind of tricky questions you have for me. All right, John?
Okay, my name's John. I'm from the UK, from England. I'm the environmental officer. Been with the company again, 17 years, joined in 02. Joined the company as deputy security, was a safety officer for some time, and then I've been an environmental officer for the last 10 or 11 years, and I've found my niche in life. Anything to do with the environmental side of life, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Okay, well, very simple, everybody. That's us. Now we would like to get to hear from you. So we have Tom here, part of your cruise director staff. We have Duda as well. They have the microphones. They'll come over to you. Just put your hands up. You can tell us your name, where you're from, and we're going to kick it off right here with our first question. All right. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. I understand that every port we go in requires a pilot. Yes?
Correct.
Fine. Lately on the internet, there's been several depictions of cruise ships having catastrophes going into the docks. Who's ultimately responsible, you or the pilot?
Yeah, so ultimately responsibility remains with the captain in all situations. So pilots are compulsory in most ports. There are a few ports around the world where they are not. Some of them would actually be Denmark, where I'm from, strangely enough. But apart from that, it's local regulations, compulsory we take the pilots. The pilots they don't have the same sort of, you don't necessarily need the same qualification, experience and same requirements depending on which country or even which state you are a pilot in. So they're not consistent like they are for a Master Mariner, a captain's license, which has to be a standard all across the world regardless of where you're from. There's only really one place in the world where there's a shared responsibility, sort of like you can get the blame 50-50, and that's in the Panama Canal. So ultimately the ones to blame for cruise ships crashing would be the captain. And yeah, I tried to find another way, but chief engineer most of the time anyway.
Okay, right to the left. Good afternoon. My name is Ray from New Jersey, New York, Haiti, all of those. Okay. I have a question. 22 knots, is it converted to 22 miles on land or is it different?
It's slightly different. So basically knots is nautical miles per hour, whereas a land mile is miles per hour. So if you have like 1 knot, that's equal to about 1.2 US land miles.
Thank you. One more question. How do you reduce your impact on the environment at those ports where we go to? Because I know there's like 5,000 of us here and things like that, trash and things like that. How do you minimize your impact in those ports?
In the ports, so not on the ship, in the ports as such. Good question. I mean, that's basically a question that technically we should throw back to you, right? Because when you go ashore in the ports and what you do and what you buy there and what you do with the trash is sort of a little bit beyond our control, but we can talk a bit about what we do with the trash and the things on board the ship maybe. Would that help? John, all yours.
Oh, mine. We practice above and beyond compliance, reduce, recycle, reuse, etc. The general, when it comes to garbage on board, we're talking about solid garbage, for example, what's coming from your staterooms. You will see it disappears during the day. Okay, what happens is the crew members bring it down to our garbage room and they will separate everything out. We actually we separate our glass, our plastic, our everything, batteries, glass, etc. We separate all of this out and then we will land it to shoreside. What the bits and pieces that we can't actually sort out, they go into our dry garbage box. The vendors that take the garbage away from this ship, they guarantee us nothing goes to landfill directly from the ship, even our ash. Okay. What happens is these dry garbage boxes, they've got pieces in there that we can't deal with on board. So things like wood and large items. They will separate them out. They have their own incinerators, and the incinerators that they use are actually providing electricity for the local community. So everything from the ship gets recycled, reused, or repurposed before it goes on to further. Okay.
I think in terms of the environmental footprint in the ports, the ship itself, we do not discharge anything in the ports, not even ballast water, and we also have an emission control system in terms of how we, our exhaust gases. We have something called a scrubber system, so we basically wash our exhaust gases and so on. So maybe it was more related to that. All right.
All right, right here in front of you guys.
Hi, Paul from New York. For the environmental officer, over the past 20 years, would you say the oceans are getting cleaner despite all your efforts, or they're still getting worse? Think about when you first started to now.
I can, on a personal level, I've been all around the world, and it does depend on what area of the world you're in. I've been to some areas of the world where you are literally, I don't want to say where it is, you are literally trawling through garbage, okay? Other situations, even in the Caribbean, is much, much better than it used to be. There is particular instances where you've got to understand that what the local geography and the local population are dealing with. There is certain places, for example, where they put all the garbage in the river. If they have a thunderstorm, it all gets washed into the sea. And quite often what happens is, I get called up to the front desk saying, what about all the garbage in the sea? It's obviously coming from the islands, and it's the situation they have on the island rather than. But we just try to reduce our environmental impact in every way, shape or form. Whether it's the amount of emissions that we're doing, we're talking about the ship's hull, the design of the ship's hull, for example. We're 18% more efficient on the ship's hull from the Voyager class. Our emissions from the engine, we're reducing our emissions. These ships are so much better than the older ships. That's all I can say.
Got one just over by the bar.
Hi, my name's Teresa. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm a high school science teacher, and I was wondering if you would share how you became interested in your career here on a cruise ship, and how I might share the opportunity of those careers with my students.
Right. So I guess our story is the same, right? Our parents went on a cruise 20 years ago and they left us here. In terms of working on a cruise ship, the structure basically is 3 different main departments. So you have the technical side, which the king of the basement here is running. So that's anything that has to do with certified technical personnel and anything to do with running basically a city. Power plant, water, refrigeration, and all these sort of things. So there are many different sort of positions, certifications in that, but very regulated and very sort of, you could say, it sort of follows more or less of a strict road in terms of how you get from the bottom to the top. Same thing on the deck side with nautical. I mean, we're required to have nautical licenses, and our medical staff, they need, of course, licenses and so on. On the hotel side, it's a little bit different. On the hotel side, it's more like you can make opportunities for yourself and more about how your personality and skill sets fit in the various departments. But of course, if you make food, then you need to be certified as a chef, and you need to go through those ranks. Mitch can tell a story about how he became cruise director, but I don't think that cruise directors, they follow a specific path. It depends a little bit where you come from. So I think that in order to guide anybody sort of wanting to go to sea, there's lots of good information out there. Roy Gribben also has got the university basically as part of the company, where we train our own people. We have this crew where you can apply online. You can read a lot about the different positions. So we have to come with certain licenses to work on the marine side for the most part. If you come work on the hotel side, then these guidance can provide you what I the sort of entry-level positions. And then actually a lot of our crew members here on board, they enroll in different programs while they're working at the same time and on vacation. And then they acquire certification and skills and experience and all this sort of stuff. And then they can move up through the ranks within the cruise line. Does that answer your question, or did I? It did? Okay, great.
All right, we have right over here in front of you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, I'm Madeline, I'm from the Bronx. I would just like to say that I like this captain. Okay? Can we give him a round of applause? The other day,
I paid her $20 to say that.
The other day when I've been on 17 cruises, right? And when you announced that there would be a bumpy ride, that was one of the few times that we're warned in advance that the ride will be bumpy. And even though you said that, I heard in your voice confidence, and you knew you're at the top of your game. So even though I knew it would be bumpy, for some reason I didn't get nervous. So I want to congratulate you for that and let you know that people are listening. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very easy question. Can we have some more of them?
I've got a couple of junior cruisers right here at the back.
How does the ship float?
It's a very good question. I've been trying to figure that out myself.
Wait, my name's Aiden and I'm from Maryland.
All right, Aiden. So imagine that if you could take the ship out of the water, and then there was a big hole where the ship used to be, that if the water just sort of stayed where it was, right? The weight of that water is exactly the same weight as the ship, and that's how it stays afloat.
Thank you.
That's what they told me at school. Anyway.
All right, gentlemen, right over here.
Oh, was another one?
Hi, my name is Weston. I'm from Maryland. How many hours did it take to build this cruise ship?
Hours, hang on while I count that in my head. It took about 1.5 years. So, yeah, that's a thing that's closest we
You
get
can do
to.
the math. 1.5 years, very good. Okay, next question.
Hi, Jim from Phoenix, Arizona. On the marine side, what is the typical schedule for you guys? And I'm assuming it's going to vary for like Oasis class, Quantum, Voyager, etc.
When you say schedule, you're talking about the work on board or our work vacation sort of thing?
Yeah, like work vacation, like days working, days off.
Okay, we on the marine side we work 10 weeks on, and then we have 10 weeks vacation. It's a part-time job. There are 2 of each position, so I have a counterpart that's on vacation now, and then it's the two of us. Same thing for chief engineer. For the hotel side, typically you work 4 months on and have 2 months off, right? Is that typically?
Yeah, exactly. So management will do 4 months on, 2 months off, and somehow the marine side has way better agents than we do. I don't know how that slipped past us. But yeah, and then the crew will work anywhere between 5 months, 6 months, 7, and a lot of the crew will try their best to extend to 8 or 9 as long as they can. But no one is allowed to work over 10 months ever as a contract. Okay, we're going to move up. Next question. To the bar.
Hello, my name's Ken. I'm in Virginia. I noticed we have a lovely Sea State Zero for our ride back. My question for you is, what is the highest sea state this ship has encountered, either planned or unplanned?
Right, okay, so in terms of the sea state, there's a couple of other factors to take into consideration. I don't think any of us were on board when this ship encountered waves in, I would say, around 25, 30 feet, something like that, but I can't say on the top of my head. What we planned for, again, there are different factors that plays in. So one thing is the wave height, another thing is the swell height, and probably even equally important is the period, the swell period or the wave period. So basically we have some, when we plan for, as you probably know from time to time, you know, when you get the question, is it safe to go on a cruise in the hurricane season, for example? And we say, yeah, it's perfectly safe, but you may end up in an entirely different place than you were planning on going, because that's when we start rerouting, you know, for weather. I'd say something to keep in mind: we don't actually change the courses and our routes because it's a safety concern. We do it out of a comfort concern, because the ships can handle an immense amount of bad weather and rough seas, but the cargo cannot, and all the crew for that matter, well, a lot of them, seen them green in the face as well. And also a cruise ship is not really built for rough seas. We have loose items, chairs, all this sort of stuff. They move around and then it's not safe and it's an unpleasant experience. And besides from that, I gotta admit, if you're seasick, you're not spending any money, so it's not even good business. And that's when we reroute them. So we have certain rules in place in terms of when we monitor the weather systems, and when different factors are met, we use that as a guideline in terms of if we're going to divert to a different port or a different route, or if it's a reasonable amount of bad weather to go through. So there's not a specific number to answer your question right to that point with one specific number. That depends.
All right, gentlemen, right straight ahead again.
My name is Steven from New York, and I have a question regarding navigation. I know that when you leave the home port or whatever, you come here, GPS tells you which way to go. You know, go so many miles, make a left, go right, whatever it is. What do you do before GPS? How do you know when to make turn starboard, when to turn port? You know, I know years ago they had the sextant, but I guess you don't use that now, do you?
No, we don't. The sextant sort of looks nice above the fireplace at home.
But how do you know when
and that's
to...
where it does the most. I think that's where it's more suitable nowadays. So, yeah, once upon a time, basically like before GPS in the cars, and when you were driving the car, you needed to stop at the gas station and pick up a map. Now the advantage was at least you had some road signs, you could figure out where you were. And we don't have any signs out here in the open sea. So, if you to make a really long story as short as possible, if you go back in the day, sextants were used to find latitudes. We actually still, it's not entirely correct that we don't use them at all, because they are still used for practice reasons and just for the historic value of that. And I think a few schools around the world, very few, but I think a few of them still actually has it as part of the skills you need to acquire in order to get licenses, but it'll be very few nowadays. So you could use those, and then primarily you would, whenever you had a sighting, so clear skies, you were able to take the sun, the moon, or stars that were identified, and then you could look them up in the almanac, and then you could find with the timing, having the correct timing, then you could find your position more or less accurate enough. Then later on in the late 70s, the first satellite systems that were used for commercial shipping, really more as that really came in and was the most commonly used, was the Magnavox system, the Russian systems, that was first made available, sort of inaccurate, but better than the Sextant. And then, of course, throughout the 80s, we used a lot of radio direction finds for navigation and these sort of charts, and then the GPSs came in, the global positioning system came in throughout the 90s and was built on ever since then. So that's a brief moment of history of navigation.
Thank you.
Still over at the bar.
Hello, I'm Leon from Massachusetts, and I'd like to ask, like, what do you think is the favorite part and least favorite part of your jobs?
It's the right answer to say sit here and answer questions. So.
Yeah.
Favorite part of the job? Well, once you've been doing, a lot of people ask, how do you get, what do you make of a life where you're gone half the year and away from home? And I sort of normally turn it around and say, what do you not make of a life when you have half a year's vacation, right? So I think that at least from my side, the long vacations, it provides a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, basically, in your own time, what you want to do. In terms of the work itself, when we're out here, we work with people from 70 different nationalities from all over the world. And I think that's very rewarding to see how that comes together and be part of that, really, and what we do here, so that hopefully we can make sure that all you get some wonderful memories to bring back home with you, and more so that you come back again and bring a lot of friends and family with you to enjoy your vacation. So I think that part is, what do you guys think? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think it's a teamwork. It really is. 70 nationalities. What we get done. I was in the military 20 odd years, and I came on board on a turnaround day and just saw everybody weaving away. You know, when we come into Bayonne and we turn the ship around, you guys are off by, say, 10:30 in the morning. We've got 4,500 guests to come on. We've got 10,000 bags on, 10,000 bags off, refueling, restoring, garbage off. It is an absolutely amazing spectacle to see and to work with. So it's the crew members that is the best part of the job. You where stuff gets done. It's a really good job. I enjoy it.
All right, gentlemen, right here, straight ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Wonderful ship, wonderful crew. We're really enjoying the cruise, as we always do. We're from West Virginia, country roads take me home. Two easy questions on it for you. One is, we seem to be sitting about amidships because we look straight out at the wake, okay? And also, assuming that the window dividers are parallel, it seems that we are sailing mainly with a constant list to starboard. Is that unusual, or is that because of the way the stabilizers are, if they're in operation right now, stabilizing the ship?
Are you sure you're sitting straight on the chair? No, well, the ship is slightly moving in terms of keeping if we are listed a little bit to one side or another. Sometimes we do a slight little list if we are, for example, doing some cleaning of tanks in the bottom, so it's easier for us to, but we don't list the ship so it become discomfort for any of you, other than when you're at the pool table, of course, then it has an impact. And then in the ports, sometimes you will see that the ship is listed up to maybe a half a degree or something like that, and that's in order to not have the gangways too steep, so that you have difficulties moving on the gangways to sort of ease that. So that's probably what you see.
A second real quick question, and probably very easy to answer, is in calm seas like this, since I know the stabilizers create drag, is there a decision at which point you employ the stabilizers or don't employ them because you want to increase fuel efficiency, but the sea is pretty calm?
Yeah, we deploy the stabilizers if if they're needed. If they're not needed or if they don't make a difference, we don't deploy them, because you're right, they do reduce a bit the speed or make us burn more fuel at the same speed. So stabilizers will work if we have a rolling of the ship. Basically, we're pushed over by wind or seas, and they work like airplane wings. So the faster the ship is going through the water, the more effective they are, as they will deflect in the opposite direction to push the ship back upright. But if we are called what's pitching, or the ship moving up and down, the stabilizers, they don't make any difference. So they're deployed whenever the environment has an impact of the comfort, let's say, and where they're effective. And that's how we deploy them. And then we remember to retract them before we try to dock the ship, otherwise we have a problem.
So are the stabilizers manually deployed, or is there an automatic system that says, okay, we're rolling enough, out they go?
They can be automatically deployed. They have an automatic motion function, so at certain lists or rolling, they can deploy automatically, but we do it manually. But they have an automatic retraction, so when the ship speed drops to less than 8 knots, they will automatically retract in case I forget to house them. So, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Still over towards the bar.
How much fuel have we going to burn through this whole cruise? First question. Second question, can the stabilizers handle any sea?
1,400 tons for this cruise. Tons of fuel. 1,400.
Okay, so how much is that in gallons? Okay, we work with the metric system. Actually, you agreed to the metric system, but was it back in the 70s, but it hasn't really sort of caught on yet. Stabilizers are effective at any row, you can say. So it's not like, let's put it this way, if there are seas that are so rough that the stabilizers, they don't help, we don't go there in the first place. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, right over here to your right,
Hi, Flynn from Pennsylvania and California. Puerto Rico. That feels like the shortest port. It feels like we get in before anything is open, but it's been like that numerous cruises we've been on. Why is that?
Right, so in terms of how the itinerary, how the ports, how many ports and the time in port are put together is primarily a commercial decision based on deployment, based on the competition, based on what you want. Research shows us that the main factor taken into consideration by the trade when booking a cruise is the amount of port and the amount of time in each port that you can get the most bang for your buck when you book a cruise. As you can imagine, that's quite tricky when we're sailing out of New York and we're going south, because that's just a really long distance to get down to the Caribbean. So in terms of this itinerary, this specific itinerary, in order to be able to, first of all, why do we arrive late in St. Martin at noon instead of in the morning? That's because that's the time we can. We're going pretty much full speed. And we also need to make sure that if we have some counter-current headwinds, because we can't control the weather just yet anyway, so we need to have a little bit in the pocket to make sure that we don't, consistently miss the mark, and we need to maintain the cruises. So, and that's really the factor when it comes to Puerto Rico. So we're going to Puerto Rico after St. Martin, and we can get there at the time we can get there, but if we don't leave at that time, we won't be able to make it to Labadee. That's full speed on every single we have, and on me on the phone to chief engineer, I need more speed. So that's the simple answer, that is what we can. And so the alternative to having short time in Puerto Rico on this run is having no port at all, if that makes sense, in terms of how the deployment has been created for this particular cruise.
We have a junior cruiser all the way over to the left.
Okay.
My name is Liam, and I'm from Pennsylvania. And how big are we, and and how do they work?
How big are the propellers and how do they work?
Each propeller is 5.5 meters in diameter. How they works? They are just turning in direction what captain decide.
There's a big engine that turns the propellers and then they push the ship through the water. Pretty much like an airplane does in the air.
Good question. Did you think of that on your own, buddy? Smart kid.
All right, right over here to your right, gentlemen.
Hi, Pam from Indiana. I wanted to find out what you guys do with the food that we don't eat. Do you recycle, reuse? What do you do?
There is none.
Well, we certainly don't reuse it. It's the first thing. So we generate about 10 tons of food waste a day. Now, a lot of that is liquid. We've got a whole transport system just for the waste food. So whether you're up in the solarium or whether you're up in the windjammer up here, all comes down to Deck Zero, where we have a silo there for the food waste. What we do with that is then we take it, we press it, we take the liquid out, and all the solids, they are dried and burned in the incinerators, and the liquids, they actually go overboard. So that's what we do with food waste.
Right in the center.
Good afternoon. I've been fortunate enough to go on several cruises over the last